Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know what time of day you found us, but we're glad you found us. You've landed on the Guambai podcast. Guambai podcast brought to you by the Dildo Brewing Company and Museum. The Dildo Brewing Company and Museum is home to Eyes Dubai, PA. It is located in beautiful downtown Dildo, home of the beautiful Dildo sign, erected by Jimmy Kimmel himself. Sister city, if we can call Dildo a city, to Los Angeles, California, and a place that you should visit if you haven't already done so. My name is Kevin. I'm coming at you from London, Ontario, excited about some trivia.
And I'm Darryl, and I'm here in the motherland of Whiteway, Newfoundland and Labrador.
It's a beautiful spot, home of the Shag Rock.
Home of the Shag Rock. Was a beautiful day today, beautiful sunset.
Oh, fantastic.
Down just over to the side of the Shag Rock. Sight to behold.
It is. I wish I was there to see it. But anyway, later on. One bite at once, as we'd say, right?
One by you will be.
What do you got? We got Mary Walsh coming up today on this podcast for our segment, World Famous in Newfoundland, brought to you by Crooked Arse Creations. Crooked Arse Creations. Some of it you'll like, some of it you won't. Whatever. They don't care. He's a crooked arse.
No, Mary Walsh is definitely world famous in Newfoundland, world famous all over Canada.
So what kind of questions, when we got Mary Walsh on this show, because I know what kind of questions I got for you to challenge you when you're talking to Mary, but what kind of questions do you have for me that sort of thematically fit with Mary Walsh being on the show?
Yeah, well, Mary Walsh is, like I said, one of the most well-known Newfoundlanders. And what I thought I'd do is go back through Newfoundland's history and pick out for you some very prominent, well-known Newfoundland women of history.
Awesome.
And I think some of these women you know a bit about, maybe a couple you probably haven't heard too much about, but I won't go too hard on you with the questions.
Okay.
Some of them are okay. Of course, every now and again I try to throw in some really tricky ones for you and make it as hard as I can for you because I don't want you getting them all right.
You're like that, but now I tell you,
I've always been like that.
You've always been like that. Now, what I don't want to do is, I when we go up backside park swimming, I never was one to jump right in. I had to ease my way in and put my feet in first and all that. So just let me dip my toe in the water.
You were a little timid, yeah.
Timid is an understatement. So let's get this going by easing me in with a warm up. I need a warm up.
Yeah, so I'll warm you up with a Newfoundland word as we've done.
Okay,
as is our custom, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So today's word is feck.
Feck.
F-E-C-K.
Feck.
Feck.
Feck. Okay. Well, you know what I'm going to ask you. Can you use it in a sentence?
Maybe.
Okay.
So let's see. I went and got a feck to oil my clock mechanism.
Well, Darryl is cleaning his clock. Well,
I'm
sir,
cleaning the clock with a feck.
He's cleaning.
I'm not cleaning it. I'm not cleaning it.
He's oiling it. You're oiling it.
I'm oiling my clock.
Oil seems important to this then. So I'm going to say a feck is one of those outfits that Dad used to have with the little trigger on the back for squirting oil around.
Okay, like an oil can. Yeah, no, that's not what a feck is.
Okay.
But it did sort of the same purpose.
Okay, so it's like a Q-tip then.
Yeah, kind of like a Q-tip, but it's not a Q-tip. It's actually a fine goose feather.
Okay, well, I could see you now with your goose feather and your clock and your bit of clipper oil or whatever it is you're going to use there.
Yeah, I can't imagine you can't remember me cleaning our clock.
No, it's not. That's not something that I saw. Feckless is what this is. Feckless.
So you are warmed up now.
I am limber, buddy. I am ready to go. Bring on these significant women of Newfoundland history. Educate me. Oh, teacher.
Okay.
I'm
going to go, as I've often done with these, I usually start off kind of chronologically.
Ancient.
Far back in Newfoundland's history, and I bring you closer to the now.
Right.
For the first Newfoundland and Labrador woman that I'm going to talk about is a woman by the name of Mikak.
Mikak.
Have you ever heard of Mikak?
I have. I have to confess that I don't know a lot about Mikak, but I did read about Mikak in a book that I read last year by Andrea Proctor way back when. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic, because that'll give you a basis upon which perhaps to get some of these questions that I'm going to. And this was one of the ones I was a little bit worried about if you hadn't heard of Mikak, because not really, I don't think has been traditionally one of the more prominent figures that has been discussed in our history, unfortunately.
Certainly, we didn't learn it in school.
So. No, and she was a pretty significant and prominent figure in Newfoundland and Labrador history. Absolutely. Yeah. Specifically Labrador history, of course.
Yeah.
My first question is not really about Mikak, associated with her, I suppose. What is the name of the northernmost currently settled community in Newfoundland and Labrador? But of course, it's in Labrador. I'll give you a multiple choice if you want it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that.
Okay. So Hebron, Nain, Hopedale, or Makovic?
Yeah, so I was thinking either Hebron or Nain, and I would say Hebron.
Okay, I'm going to have to give you at least partial points on this one, because Hebron is further north than Nain.
Yeah,
but nobody lives there anymore. It was resettled in 1950.
Nobody there anymore. But certainly when Mikak was on the go.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I did say in the question, most currently settled community.
Sure. Okay, you did.
So
yes.
that would be Nain. Nain
Yes.
is the northernmost community. One of the people, played a big role in Nain becoming a community was an Inuit woman by the name of Mikak.
That's right.
And so I want to take a few minutes of your time to chat about her.
Oh, let's do that.
She was born all the way back in 1740. She died in Nain in 1795. And what was basically one of the things that was significant about Mikak was that she was one of several Inuit people who actually traveled all the way to Europe in the 18th century.
Yes, but
I guess in a nutshell, a Moravian missionary by the name of Jens Haven came to the coast of Labrador in 1752. And through some missionary work, he ended up meeting Mikak. Mikak stayed with Jens Haven and a group of Europeans at the station in Chateau Bay over the course of one winter. And it was at that point that Mikak, became friends with the Europeans, learned the English language. The governor of Newfoundland at the time, Governor Pallister, in 1768, ordered one of the Europeans that was there when Mikak met Jens Haven, the guy by the name of Francis Lucas, to bring Mikak and two of her sons to England. And there in England that she learned to speak and write English fluently, actually.
Wow.
Here's my question for you.
Okay.
What was the purpose behind Pallister and Francis Lucas taking Mikak to England? Was it to display her as others had been in human zoos, which is quite
disgusting?
Disgusting, yeah.
Yeah.
To be forced into service as a servant in the home of Lucas, for the purposes of conducting scientific research on the Inuit people, or to show her how advanced and amazing European society was?
Wow. I can't see it being the last one. I believe it was to do scientific research.
No, you should have went with the first idea. It was to show her how advanced and amazing European society was. The idea was once she saw that, she would go back to her people basically tell everybody about it, and it would encourage trade with the Inuit peoples of Labrador, make it a lot easier for the Europeans. So that was the reason they brought her to England. While in England, she met many members of the aristocracy and the royal family. The aristocrats of England treated her as a curiosity, of course, but it was said that they were taken by her beauty and her charm. Her time in England has been immortalized. In which of the following ways? Is there a statue of her in Hyde Park in London? Is her portrait was painted by a prominent English painter. A widely published book was written about her life in Labrador, or a play was performed about her life in Labrador, and she actually appeared in that play on one occasion?
Oh boy.
All those are possible, isn't it?
Yeah. I'll go with a portrait was painted.
Yeah, you'd be 100% correct.
Hmm.
John Russell, famous painter. John Russell painted her portrait while she wore extravagant dresses and jewelry given to her by none other than Augusta, Dowager Princess of Wales.
Wow.
The portrait was exhibited at the Royal Academy of Arts in London and is currently in Germany. So Mikak grew very fond of the Princess of Wales during her visit to England. They actually continued the relationship after she returned to Labrador and even sent gifts to each other afterwards. So an interesting little sidebar of the story. And in 1769, partly because of Mikak insisting that the Moravians would be welcome in Labrador, the Moravians were given a land grant to establish a mission settlement in Labrador. And shortly after the Moravians were given the land grant, Mikak returns to Labrador with one of her sons. The other son she left in England, and unfortunately he passed away a year later. So they return in 1769 on a ship with Francis Lucas again, and she tells her people of wonderful things that she had seen while in Europe, the stories of advanced technology and that sort of thing. And she was a driving factor behind the Inuit people allowing the Moravians to establish a permanent settlement in Labrador nearby. And in 1770, a year after her return, the Moravians would finally arrive in Labrador and establish their mission settlement. So there you go. There's the tie-in with the establishment of their mission and eventually the establishment of the town of Nain. In 1771, I'll just try you on this one. The Moravians were actually deciding to head back to England for the winter. She took the opportunity. Remember I told you she continued a friendship?
Yes.
With the Princess of Wales?
Yes.
So she gave the Moravians a gift to give to the Princess of Wales. What did she give them to deliver as a gift? And I'm going to give you 4 choices and not trying to make it easy on you, Tal.
Not at all.
So was it fox pelts, carved seal tusks, Inuit stone sculptures, or beaded chains?
I will go with I'm gonna go with beaded chains.
Yeah, I'd probably go with that one too. It was fox pelts, actually.
Well, that I would not have guessed.
So yeah, that's basically the life of. Well, there's a lot more to the life of Mikak than that, but you know, she had a very interesting life over the years. At times, she fell out with the Moravians. Actually, she didn't stay on good terms with them,
right?
And there was various reasons for that. But eventually, she did kind of come back into favor with them. And just before her death, she returned to Nain one last time, 1795. She was in poor health. And near the end of her life, she asked the Moravians for something. My question to you is, what did she ask them for? Did she ask them to be baptized? Did she ask them to be buried in her home settlement further north? Did she ask for her to have her story written down? Or to look after her family financially? What did she ask the Moravians for?
I'm going to say she asked for a burial back home.
No, she asked to be baptized.
Okay.
And she passed away on the first day of October, 1795, while under the care of the Moravian missionaries in Nain. And she was buried in a cemetery in Nain. All right, Kevin, I'm going to turn my attention now to someone I'm sure you've heard tell of. Okay. Very significant woman in Newfoundland and Labrador history.
Okay.
A woman by the name of Shanawdithit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've heard of Shanawdithit.
I have indeed.
So Shanawdithit was, or has become known as, one of the last known living Beothics, First Nations people of Newfoundland. She was born near a large lake on the island of Newfoundland in and around 1801. So again, a long time ago.
Yep.
At the time that she was born, the population of the Beothic were dwindling. Their traditional way of life was becoming increasingly unsustainable due to, English settlement, European settlement. as well as the effects of infectious diseases that have been brought from Europe, such as smallpox in particular,
Right.
which the Beothic peoples had no immunity.
Right.
And they were slowly cut off from access to their food sources, cut off from the sea, in particular on the northeast coast of Newfoundland, and made it very difficult for them in the summertime to access most of, or a good portion of their food.
Mm-hmm.
As a child, Shanawdithit came into contact with Europeans. I don't know if you knew that or not. No, not one of the more commonly told stories about Shanawdithit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she came into contact with Europeans. My question for you, what happened during the encounter? Did she receive a gift of a woman's hat? Was she chased by two Europeans, but they couldn't catch her? Was she shot by a trapper? They had a pleasant exchange and small trinkets were given.
Oh, I'm going to say that is it possible that she was shot? Is that the ridiculous answer? That's what happened?
She was shot by a white trapper. She was washing caribou in the river and she suffered an injury for a time, but she recovered.
Wow. Never knew.
She had an aunt, Shanawdithit did, who was captured by European settlers. Do you know the name of her aunt that was captured? It would be the other Newfoundland female Beothic that is well known.
Yeah. I won't say it right, but Demis do it. I'm not getting it right. Demis do it. Yes.
Demis do it. She was captured in March of 1819. She was captured when European settlers went to recover stolen articles and to try to establish friendly contact with the dwindling Beothic people. In the process, they captured Demis and unfortunately killed her husband.
Yeah.
Her husband was a Beothic chief.
Yeah.
And this all occurred in a lake in central Newfoundland. Do you know the name of the lake?
Is this the lake that they recently had a name change for?
Indeed it is.
Yeah, so what was called Red Indian Lake is now, I think, Beothic Lake.
Demis herself was taken to Twillingate after she was captured. And she was put into care of an Anglican missionary called a guy by the name of John Lee, who recorded from her the Beothic vocabulary. She was later brought to St. John's. An unsuccessful effort was made to return her to her own people. And unfortunately, you know the story, I think, Demis succumbed to tuberculosis. After her death, what happened to Demis body or her remains? Were they returned to Red Indian Lake or Beothic Lake? Was it sent to England for study, buried in the Roman Catholic Cemetery in St. John's, or kept in a crypt at the Newfoundland Museum?
I'm going to say it's B.
So she was actually returned to Beothic Lake in central Newfoundland. She was returned there in February of 1820 on a party that was led by British naval officer David Buchan. Then in 1827, Scottish explorer and naturalist William Cormac saw her body placed side by side with that of her husband in an elevated sepulchre erected by the last survivors of her people. What did Cormac do with some of the remains of Demis and her husband? Did he bury them nearby? Did he send them to the United Kingdom or Great Britain? Did he bring them to St. John's to be housed in the Newfoundland Museum, or he brought them to Grand Falls, where they are to this day?
I believe those remains at some point went to the United Kingdom.
And you're very right. In fact, went to Edinburgh, Scotland, where they were eventually housed at the National Museum of Scotland.
So the last one was a trick question.
Yeah, it was. Cormac was Scottish, so I guess that was the connection there. In January of 2019, the director of National Museums of Scotland announced that an agreement was reached with the Canadian authorities for the remains to be returned to Canada. They were repatriated to Canada and are currently housed at the Newfoundland Museum in St. John's at the rooms. I'm going to come back to Shanawdithit now, if you don't mind. The spring of 1823, Shanawdithit lost her father, who died after falling through the ice. Most of her extended family had already died from a combination of starvation, illness, exposure, and attacks from European settlers. So they were in, pretty bad shape. Numbers were dwindling, and they weren't doing very well. So in 1823, Shanawdithit, along with her mother and her sister, encountered trappers searching for food in Badger Bay. Eventually, they were brought back to her people, and they left them at a place called Charles Brook, located on the western side of the Bay of Exploits, just north of the Exploits River. Unfortunately, though, they searched, but they couldn't locate any surviving Beothics in the area. Unfortunately, also, Shanawdithit's mother and sister's health worsened, and they soon died, likely of tuberculosis. All alone, Shanawdithit was taken into the home of John Peyton Jr. at Exploits, where she worked as an assistant for 5 years. The settlers in Newfoundland colony decided to rename Shanawdithit by a European name. Do you know what name they gave her? Did they call her Nancy April, Shauna D, Aurora, or Sylvie?
Oh, geez. Maybe I just don't know this. Aurora?
Her name was Nancy April, of course, for the month that she was captured.
Ah, yes. Nancy April.
Nancy April. So she was taken to Exploits. She learned into the household of Peyton, John Peyton Jr. She learned how to speak English. But the colonial government hoped that she would become a bridge to her people, basically. She really had no interest in that. She was relocated in 1828 to St. John's to live in the household of William Cormac. He was the founder of something called the Beothic Institution. She stayed in Cormac's care until 1829 when he left Newfoundland. And following his departure, she was cared for by the Attorney General, James Sims. She spent the last 9 months of her life in his home, and she was not in good health. Sadly, then in 1829, Shanawdithit died in St. John's Hospital after a long fight with tuberculosis. Where was Shanawdithit's remains buried? In St. John's graveyard? Brought back to Beothic Lake? Or was it sent to England for study?
I'm going to go with my original, that they were sent to the UK for study.
So you're partially right. Her remains were actually buried in St. John's in a graveyard of St. Mary the Virgin Church on Southside Road in St. John's. Her skull, however, was sent to the Royal College of Physicians in London for study. So that was a sad chapter in what was, a lot of mistreatment of Shanawdithit late in life as well as in death. All right, Kevin, I'm going to try you out now with another pretty prominent woman of Newfoundland history.
Okay.
Her name is Helena Squires. Ever hear tell of her?
Oh, wasn't she the wife of Richard Squires?
She was indeed the wife of Sir Richard Squires. She had the title of Lady. Lady Helena Squires was born in 1879, so we're getting up at least close to the 19th century.
Assuming up to the 1900s.
The 1900s, sorry.
Yeah.
She was born on an island in Green Bay. Want to take a stab at which island she was born on?
I'll say Pilley's Island.
Really, really close. This particular island was resettled just recently, a few years ago.
Oh, yeah, that was Little Bay Islands, wasn't there?
Little Bay Islands, yep.
Yes.
1879. She was the daughter of James Strong, who was a supplier to the fishing industry. She was actually a twin. And of course, Little Bay Islands community is resettled in 2019. Helena Squires was first for a woman in Newfoundland and Labrador. One of the main reasons why I'm going to talk a little bit about her.
Okay.
You know what that was, what that first was? Was it she was the first to have a novel published? Was she the first to get elected to the House of Assembly? Was she the first to become a lawyer or the first to become a doctor?
I'm going to go with novel.
Not sure if she ever published a novel, ever. She was, however, the first to get elected to the House of Assembly, first female to get elected to the House of Assembly. She did become the first woman to stand for and win a seat in Newfoundland and Labrador House of Assembly in a 1930 by-election. Do you know what district?
I don't.
Take a stab. Just any district. Just take a stab at it.
Green Bay.
Close. Lewisport.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
it was out in that area.
Okay.
Do you know what party? What political party?
Was she married to Sir Richard by then?
Oh, definitely, yes.
Some form of liberal.
Liberal, it was.
But there was a period there where the Liberal Party became something else, yeah? Liberal something or another. There's a lot of...
Oh, yeah, there was different coalitions and monikers for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she was a liberal.
Yeah.
Of course, her husband, Sir Richard Squires, was the prime minister at the time.
Yes.
And he was a liberal. She served from 1930 to 1932, so it was a short tenure.
Yeah.
Women actually, when she got elected in 1930, women over the age of 25 were allowed to vote and had recently gotten the vote. In the election just preceding the one that she got elected in a by-election was the 1928 general election.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what percentage of women who were eligible to vote actually voted? It was the first election that they could vote in. Do you know how many of them actually voted? Was it 60, 70, 80, or 90% of those eligible actually voted?
I'll say 90%.
90% it was. They had asked for, worked for, protested for, and asked for, the right to vote, got the right to vote.
And showed up.
They turned out. They showed up.
Yeah.
She was the mother of 7 children. And she, in her formative years, she attended the St. John's Methodist College in St. John. Question for you. What current St. John's High School traces its roots back to the Methodist College? Not going to give you multiple choice. You should know most of the high schools in St. John's.
Prince of Wales Collegiate?
Prince of Wales Collegiate. The St. John's Methodist College actually dates back to 1860.
Yeah.
Had several buildings, some destroyed by fire. I think this is the tie-in with the name Prince of Wales Collegiate. The cornerstone of the new Methodist College of 1919 was laid in 1919 by the then Prince of Wales, later King Edward VII. So Lady Helena Squires, she was well educated. She attended Mount Allison University, trained to be a teacher, and also was said to have attended school in Boston, Emerson College, and at least one source that I had access to said that she may have even attended Harvard. She was also a social activist. She worked to found a teacher school and a maternity hospital. And then she was elected in 1930 in a by-election. What percentage of the vote in that by-election, what percentage of the vote do you think she got? Was it 54%, 63%, 72%, or 81%?
81%.
81% it is. She won in a landslide. When Newfoundland joined Confederation in 1949, Lady Squires was elected the first president of the Provincial Liberal Association, a position she held until 1958. She died in 1959 at her retirement home in Toronto. Question for you. One of the final ones on Lady Squires. Did she support the efforts of the Women's Suffrage League to obtain the vote for women in the 1920s?
Did she support it? I'll say no.
Yeah. No, there's no reports of her actively. I should really have said actively support.
Sure, I'm sure
she probably did.
Support
she probably did support it, but there was no evidence of actively campaigning for. Or she was said to have been witty, humorous, well-read, intelligent, and won praise and respect from both sides of the house. So there's Lady Helena Squires, significant woman in Newfoundland history, the first woman to be elected to the House of Assembly. How about a Newfoundland hero, Anne Harvey?
Anne Harvey.
She and her family lived on a rocky island near a place called Isle of Mort.
Oh, yes, the Isle of Death.
Southwest coast of Newfoundland.
Yeah.
Her father was actually born in Jersey, moved to Newfoundland with his wife, and he had 8 children, and Anne was the eldest. She was born in 1811. She herself got married later and had 8 children. You already answered my first question. My first question was going to be, what does Isle of Mort mean?
The Isle of Death, and I knew you'd get it in there.
And why? and what did you just know that because you know the word, or did you know that because of some other association?
I only know the word, to be honest. I know
Okay.
I only know enough French to be dangerous, but I do know that death is more. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Isle of Death, I guess, for the treacherous waters of the
I would
say. So the event that made her famous, I was saying, Isle of Death, of course, known for shipwrecks, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And do you know why they were in peril?
Yes, because their ship ran ashore.
Sure. Yes. So she rescued people who were shipwrecked. Is right.
Yes.
Have you ever heard the story at all? Have you ever heard the story of Anne Harvey?
No,
Okay.
I don't know that I have, actually. I really
So
don't.
she's known for 2 rescues, actually, believe it or not.
Okay.
Anyway, in 1828, the British brig Dispatch was on its way from England to Quebec City with 200 Irish immigrants and 11 crew members. But unfortunately, struck a storm south of Newfoundland and was blown upon the rocks in Isle of Mort. Anne and her father were out fishing, and she sighted a keg, a straw bed, and some other floating items in the turbulent seas. Immediately realized must be a shipwreck nearby. They went back and they fetched Anne's oldest brother, George's oldest son, Tom. They launched a punt. They also took with them their Newfoundland dog, who ended up helping them in the rescue. Trivia question. What was the dog's name? And I'm going to try to stump you on this one. See how you do. Was it Stormy, Hairy Man, Big Black, or George?
I got to say George.
As much as I would love for this heroic dog to be called George,
it wasn't.
It wasn't. No, this particular Newfoundland dog was known as Hairy Man. That was his name.
They named the dog Hairy Man.
Hairy Man.
That's got to be wicked at the door at night. Hairy Man, Hairy Man, Hairy Man, Hairy Man. Come on, Hairy Man, Hairy Man.
So with their brother, Anne, and father, along with Hairy Man, the dog, the Newfoundland dog, they went out in search of this ship. On a nearby beach, they found 6 men who had survived the wreck and set out. Then they set out to find survivors, which they found a large group on a tiny island 3 miles from the shore. And the island itself was barely large enough to hold the remaining survivors at that time in this particular area. And they were exhausted. They were cold. Afterwards, this particular rock that they were on, what do you think they called this small island or this small rock that the survivors were huddled on? So here's the trivia piece.
Okay.
Was it, to this day, is it called Shipwreck Island, Wreck Rock, Disaster Island, or Survivor's Rock?
I feel like it's got to be Survivor's Rock.
I'm really doing well on coming up with
clearly
possible
I getting
answers
any of these
that
right.
Wreck Rock.
Yeah, but there's no indication that they wrecked there. I mean, they might have washed up there. They survived there. I mean, whoever named it should have named it Survivor Rock.
I think it would be a good name for it, for sure. Much more positive name. Hey? Right. Where did the dog come in? Anne's father couldn't get any closer to about 100 feet due to the heavy seas. So he threw a billet of wood, which the survivors attached a rope to, and the dog swam for it. And it was the use of the rope and this particular way that they rescued. I think 163 or so people that they rescued in total. So it was quite significant. So the rescue efforts were quite significant. As you can imagine, all these people took a long time. How many days do you think it took, or how many days did Anne and her father spend rescuing these shipwrecked people? Was it 1, 2, 3, or 4 days?
Well, I'm not giving up now. I am committed to the highest number, 4. It took 4 days.
No, it took 3.
3 days, of course.
3 days.
3 days.
Right. 3 days, a long time to be going back and forth out on the open sea and rescuing people.
Wicked.
So they did. They brought the people back to their tiny little community. Didn't have a lot of food there, but they did what they could. But they fed them with what they had. And by the time the HMS Tyne, under the command of Captain Grant, arrived 8 days later, after they had received word of the wreck, they found in this little tiny community where Anne's family were housing these people, no bread, no flour, no tea left, and they were really on the verge of starvation. Grant did replenish the food stocks of the Harveys and remove the survivors to Halifax, where news of the heroism of Anne and her father traveled throughout the island. Newfoundland Governor Thomas Cochrane at the time applied to the Royal Humane Society for recognition of the family and a special medal to be struck. Lloyd's of London, the insurance agents, gave the Harveys a princely sum of how much money? 50 pounds, 100 pounds, 150 pounds, or 200 pounds?
150 pounds.
150, close. 100 pounds.
100 pounds. Let me say 100 pounds.
100 pounds. Surprisingly or amazingly, Anne's days as rescuer were not over.
Incredible.
10 years later, in 1838, a boat by the name of the Rankin was sailing from Glasgow to Quebec, and it also went aground. This time, she helped save the lives of 25 more people.
Wicked.
So she saved, in both cases, she saved over 180 people.
Yes,
with her efforts and that of her father as well.
Yep.
She became known. Which of the following has been named after Anne Harvey in her honor?
Okay.
To kind of honor her heroism. A school, a search and rescue battalion, a ship, or a hospital?
I'll go with ship.
So the Anne Harvey is a Canadian Coast Guard vessel built in 1987 in Halifax, to this day still in service, located in St. John's, Newfoundland.
There you go.
I got one travels right around this island.
I got one right.
And here's an interesting thing about that ship. Believe it or not, on the 1st of April, 2015, the Anne Harvey ship ran aground.
Not in Isle of Mort.
No, but southwest of Burgeo, which is not that far from Isle of Mort. I mean, a bit of a distance, but certainly in the same general part of the island.
Anne Harvey was trying to get home. It's time for me to turn the tables on you. It's time for our segment, World Famous in Newfoundland. Mary Walsh is dying to have a go at you and show you up. So
that won't be much trouble.
Well, let's switch gears and go to that. Let's bring Mary in here. Well, we're very excited to have with us for World Famous in Newfoundland, Mary Walsh. In fact, it's not fair to say just world famous in Newfoundland, because Mary Walsh is world famous outside of Newfoundland. She's world famous all over the world. So welcome and thank you for doing this.
Thank you, guys. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So this World Famous in Newfoundland segment is sponsored by a company called Crooked Arse Creations. Crooked Arse Creations. Some of it you'll like, some of it you won't. Whatever. I get the impression that he must have known me and Darryl in a previous life to name his company Crooked Arse Creations.
Yeah.
Not maybe you though, Mary.
No.
You're not crooked though, right, Mary? You don't get crooked?
Sometimes I get very crooked. Yeah.
Okay,
cranky and crooked.
It happens. Sure. Happens to all of us. All right. So we're going to play this game here. But before we do, just to check in with you and what you're up to, I just, you've a great novel out. You've a short play going, a film going, and you're working on projects as we speak. Tell our listeners what you got going right now.
Right. I'm working on a second novel called Come Home Year. Oh. And so, that's been slow, very, very slow. But I'm doing, we did a series, myself and Dave Sullivan and other fantastic people last year called The Mrs. Downstairs. And it is the highest grossing program on Fibe TV, awesome. Which if people have the Bell system, it's channel 1, you can see it. We're doing a second series of that. Yeah. So we're getting ready. We're writing those now. And I'm also with Fibe TV again. I'm doing something with these guys, Stuart Simpson and Andrew Tremblay and Elizabeth Hicks. And they're a sketch comedy group called Half Handsome and Bamus. Yeah. I mean, they have two names. I don't know why they have two names. And so we're doing a short series, a web series, kind of 10 minutes each, called Jack TV, which is really, really funny. I got to say, Andrew Tremblay and Stuart Simpson wrote those. And I think Elizabeth is up in Montreal, and she is definitely part of the company. And I think she's been involved. She's certainly been involved in the production end of things.
Fantastic. Well, Darryl thought earlier, just folks, that Mary was talking about us when she said half handsome. But the Bayman part we'll get it. Bamus will be. I like, but maybe it's World Bamus. Yeah.
Yeah, Bamus. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so here are the categories, and then I'm going to flip a coin, Mary, so you can choose which category to go first. So just so you know, 5 categories. The first one is called Size Matters. Size matters. This is a little bit about population is all. So don't get too excited. The Far East of Newfoundland is another category. The Far East of Newfoundland. The TCH, our good old famous Trans-Canada Highway.
Yeah.
Newfoundland Grub. Okay. So we all like a good scoff every now and then. And literary excellence. And of course, we had to talk about literary excellence because we have you on here, and your writing
That's
is
too many. That's too many.
okay.
Oh, what do we have to flip a coin to see who goes
Goes
first?
first, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You call it, Mary. Heads or tails?
Tails.
Tails it is. You get to go first. So
Well, since I picked tails, I should pick that size matters, but I won't.
okay.
I'm going to go with Newfoundland grub.
Newfoundland. Well done, Mary. Newfoundland grub it is. So your question for this one. All right. This berry, common in Newfoundland, appears on the Finnish version of the €2 coin, and in Norrland, a region in Sweden, are known as Norrland's gold.
Yeah, they're called cloudberries over there, and we call them bake apples.
That's correct. One up for Mary. That's it. You nailed that one very quickly.
Thank you.
All right. What do you think, Darryl?
Well, I think you're going to ask me give me the exact number of bake apples that grow in Newfoundland. That's probably the question.
I was going to ask Darryl because he's my older brother. How many bumps are on each bake apple? No, your question is not about bake apples, Darryl, because Darryl famously, Mary, picks a lot of bake apples in the summer. So I would never ask him about them.
She said innocently, as if she didn't want to get in on that particular berry patch. Where is it, Darryl? Where do you pick them?
Yeah, on the Canagra Peninsula. I don't know if you're familiar with down English Harbor West, that area.
Oh, like down Debbie Petite kind of.
Exactly. Yes.
Petites are down there. Down there, and that's where you get your bake. Well, I'm definitely not going down there because it's too far to go to pick berries. Right?
It's a long ways down.
Okay.
Darryl, if you ask Darryl nicely, he might be able to tell you a few he can find handier to home too. But anyway, he can hook you up.
I can hook you up with some bake apples, Mary.
Okay. Thank you, Darryl.
All right, Darryl, I'm mixing flour and butter and raisins and brown sugar and molasses and breadcrumbs. And I'm mixing them together with ginger and allspice and cinnamon. And then I'm going to boil it in a pudding bag and serve it with generous drizzles of hot rum sauce. What am I making, Darryl?
Oh, well, not much of a cook here, so it's going to be challenging. I'm going to say, I don't know, but I'm going to say, is it figgy duff?
It is indeed figgy duff. That's how you make figgy duff. Not that I've ever made it. Have you ever made it, Mary?
I have, but I wouldn't call that figgy duff. I'd call that raisin duff because you don't have any figs in there. You know, people have put dried figs in figgy duff, right?
Oh, yeah,
but
that's true.
Raisin duff, I'd call that. There's all kinds of duffs, isn't there?
Yeah, that's absolutely.
But only one fabulous man.
What do you say, Darryl?
So Mary, you're still in the lead then?
Yeah, he's still in the lead. Yes, because she can actually make it. Yeah. All right, Darryl, you get to choose now. So the other categories were literary excellence, the TCH, the Far East and Newfoundland, and size matters.
Let's go with the TCH.
The TCH. Darryl's question for the TCH reads as such. How many gallons of tar were used? No, I won't. I'm kidding. So the paving of the Trans-Canada across Newfoundland was completed on November 27, 1965, with the official opening ceremony in 1966, which was attended by Premier Joey Smallwood and Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson. Where was it held?
Well, just so happens that we traveled to Green Bay every summer for our summer holidays.
We did.
And we passed by this particular spot. And of course, Dad would always point it out, pardon the pun. So you're looking for Pearson's Peak.
Pearson's Peak is absolutely right. It's halfway. Remember, Dad would say it's halfway between Port aux Basques and St. John's. Yeah.
So not really a fair question because that's really easy for us. So he gave me a softball question there, Mary.
Tossed one in because the last time I had him on, he was whining like crazy, Mary, that my questions were too hard for him. So I'm going to give you a multiple choice on this one, Mary.
Okay, good.
Okay. Work on the Trans-Canada Highway, the Newfoundland Labrador portion, ended in 65, as I said. Route 1 is 903 kilometers, transversing northeasterly from Port aux Basques to Corner Brook before heading, as we all know, east to Gander and then southeast to St. John's. The total cost of this project, now this is 1965, was it A, 28 million? Was it B, 92 million? Or C, 120 million?
Gee whiz, I don't know. I can just remember Finish the Drive in '65. I
Yes,
remember
right,
that.
yeah.
And but I'm going to go 128 million because there must have been difficult terrain to cross.
Had to be.
Am I wrong? I'm wrong.
No, you're right. It's 120 million. And the other
Oh.
two numbers are, in fact, are the numbers that add to it. 28 million was the provincial share and 92 million was the federal share for a total of $120 million. So, Mary, you're acing this stuff. I should have had more difficult questions for you.
I just guessed that one.
All right. You get to choose the next category. What we have left is Size Matters, the Far East of Newfoundland, and Literary Excellence.
Let's go with literary excellence.
All right. The year is 1967. You remember that? Darryl says it's a good year because he was born that year.
Oh, yeah.
You too,
Expo.
right, Mary?
Expo.
Well, funny you say that because that actually features in this question.
Okay.
Okay, so 1967 marked the opening of the St. John's Arts and Culture Center.
Uh-huh.
And it was the first all-Canadian Dominion Drama Festival. And playwrights from across Canada began writing. And this explosion was also felt, of course, in Newfoundland and Labrador. Sub-regional festivals saw local plays compete. And among those plays entered were The Wreckers by Cassie Brown, The Holding Ground by Ted Russell. Top honor went to a play called Tomorrow Will Be Sunday, which went on to enjoy performance at Expo 67 in Montreal. Who was the playwright?
Harold Horwood.
Oh, I have Tom Cahill.
Oh, Tomorrow Will Be Sunday is Harold Horwood's novel, and Tom did
Wrote the play.
Tom Cal. Right, he did okay.
But
well,
see, now again, you're one level above me.
Harold Horwood wrote the novel, and Tom Cal adapted.
Did the playwright?
Yeah, I was so cocky on that. I knew it was Harold Horwood. Okay.
I think that deserves a point anyway.
Definitely points there. I mean, I've never taken
because Kevin didn't know who wrote the book.
I didn't know who wrote the book. That's right, not a clue. All right, Darryl, since you're so smart. So which Newfoundland writer and academic has been named Baroness of the House of Dracula as an honorary title bestowed by the Transylvanian Society of Dracula in Romania, has a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Dracula Society, having written books titled Reflections on Dracula, Dracula Sense and Nonsense, and Dracula, the Shade and Shadow. This person founded the Dracula Research Center and was the founding editor of the Journal of Dracula Studies.
Yeah, well, I would never have known this, but I do.
Oh, come on!
I do happen to know it because, unfortunately, this person passed away recently, right?
Correct. Yes, she did.
When I was watching the news, they featured this aspect of her expertise in her, in the stories they did on her. So I hope I get the name right. Is it Dr. Elizabeth Miller?
That is correct. Dr. Elizabeth
Kelly
Miller.
Russell. And it's interesting because it's attached to the question you asked before, because her father had been in part of the First Dominion Drama Festival. Russell,
So Dr. Elizabeth Miller, I actually did a course with her at Memorial University, which those of you listening to this can't see it, but I'm wearing a sweatshirt today, many moons ago when I was a young fellow going to Mon.
And Kelly Russell, of course, the fantastic fiddler.
Oh.
And of course, in the wonderful grand band, and in all the wonderful grand bands that we had here. That's his sister, Elizabeth.
Fantastic. Talk about a family that's given, we like to celebrate culture, heritage, and history and so on here for Newfoundland and Labrador. Talk about a family that's given so much to our, and then when you read about what Elizabeth Miller was doing academically outside of the province too, just amazing.
Amazing, eh? Yeah.
All right, Mary, you get to pick next. So we're down to Size Matters, the Far East of Newfoundland, our last two categories.
Okay, I'm going to go with Size Matters.
All right, size does indeed matter. So let's ask you a question about Size Matters. It's a dangerous venture, I feel, but we're going to go there. We're going to go there. Which is larger by population, Labrador City or Gander?
Ooh. Oh, that's hard. I'm going to say Labrador City.
Darryl?
I'm wrong.
There's only one other choice.
No, I don't think that's
Could it be
fair.
Gander?
It is Gander. Now there was a day. I mean, I lived in Labrador City for a year. There was a day when Labrador would have been bigger than Gander, but right now, Labrador City last population anyway 7,200, and Gander 11,700.
Ah,
wow.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm surprised
All right.
Gander is still that large. Yeah.
Gander's still they're punching above their weight, buddy. Let's remember,
Yeah.
come from away and all that stuff, right? So
I know.
yeah. So, all right, Darryl, which is larger by population? Gander, which we just spoke of, or Grand Falls, Windsor?
I'll stay with Gander.
Got that one wrong, Darryl. It's Grand Falls, Windsor, 14,100 to the 11,700.
Wow.
So, all right, we're down to one category then, and this one we start with we start with Darryl on this one. Yeah, James Cantwell. Darryl,
So this is the Far East, right?
the far east of Newfoundland,
Far East.
particularly Newfoundland. Okay, the island.
Okay.
So, you know what's the far east of Newfoundland, don't you? Of course.
The Far East?
Yeah, the far
Cape
east.
Spear.
Cape Spear. So James Cantwell and his descendants, apart from two intermissions, kept the Cape Spear light for over 150 years. James Cantwell had requested this job when asked what reward he wanted for an act of heroism. What did James Cantwell get rewarded for, Darryl?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that one.
An act of heroism.
Yep.
1835.
Finally got him, I think, Mary. It's hard, but I got him, I think.
I would think a shipwreck of some sort.
You're onto the right thing.
Okay,
No.
I don't know.
No, it was in a dense fog and approaching.
Oh, Mary
I-
doesn't she?
I-
Oh, wait. Oh, sorry, Mary. Yeah.
I'm thinking it's probably a daring rescue at sea.
Yes, that's a good answer. Daring rescue at sea.
So I got a question about James Cantwell and the daring
Rescue at sea.
rescue at sea. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't that on a? Now that I think of it, wasn't that on like a Black Horse commercial back in the day?
Well, I don't know.
There was a beer commercial of some sort they did with about the lighthouse and stuff like that. I think there might have been.
Well, so here's what the daring rescue at sea was. And so in 1835, a dense fog enveloped an approaching warship carrying a VIP visitor to Newfoundland, to St. John's, in fact. And the governor, worried about this thing not making it, sent several pilot boats, and a young harbor pilot named James Cantwell found the ship and guided it safely into harbor. And when asked for what he wanted for this, he said he wanted to be the lighthouse keeper. And so here's the catch, though. It had been promised to someone else. It had been promised to someone else, Emmanuel Ware. But when Ware died 10 years later, Cantwell became the second keeper, and he served at that for 35 years. And then it was passed from generation to generation, apart from one interruption after that. And then his descendants continued it till they automated the light out there. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Mary gets a question.
I gotta keep him straight, Mary.
I know, Darryl.
Mary,
Thank God you're there.
I know. It's like I always
Just
needed-
like one of my students, but I gotta
you know,
keep him.
I always needed my big brother to straighten me up. Mary, I'm the youngest of 7.
Oh.
They all
Did you
tormented me.
grow up down in the Canagra Peninsula?
No, we're from
No,
Whiteway
no.
in Trinity Bay. Darryl found a woman down on the Canagra Peninsula.
Ah.
And she's just as sweet as the bake apples.
That's right.
Ah.
And I found a woman in London, Ontario, and hence I'm here. So I'm the preacher, and so I'm up here in the Anglican Church, and he's the teacher, always trying to keep me on board. But Whiteway in Trinity Bay.
Okay, so Whiteway. Okay, so which part of you're not near Trinity then? You're more back towards Conception Bay.
Yeah, other side of the bay. Other side of the bay.
Yeah,
So like Heart's Delight, Heart's Content.
Oh yeah, all those
Dildo,
lovely
yeah.
places. Why was it called Whiteway? I wonder.
It was-
After what's his name, Whiteway, I suppose. Hey,
yeah, well, it was originally called Witless Bay, but
Yeah.
because of course there was a second Witless Bay, they changed it as they did, many names in Newfoundland that were the same for, I guess, the post office and whatever, and they
Yeah.
named it after Sir William Whiteway. Yeah.
Whiteway,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, Mary, you ready for this? This is simply true or false.
Okay.
Okay. 12 kilometers from downtown, the far east of Newfoundland, Cape Spear, is within the municipal boundaries of the city of St. John's.
I don't know. Because you have to go out past the turnoff to
Like Petty
down
Harbor and stuff there, right?
Petty Harbor, and then you go through Blackhead, and
Mhm.
I'm going to say false.
It is true. It's actually true. Yeah, it's a part of municipalities. Would you have known that, Darryl? Tell the truth.
No, no, I've never heard that before. I never would have thought that was part of St. John's.
No, me neither.
Well,
I never think of it as part of St. John's at all, right?
Well, look, you've been an absolute joy. We're thankful for you and for everything you've done for Newfoundland and Labrador and for history and our culture.
What about everything Newfoundland and Labrador's done for me? Let's talk about that.
Well, yeah, that's true too, I guess, isn't it?
That's true. Where would I be without Newfoundland and Labrador? Yeah. I guess at sea. But you know what I mean? It's been such a home, such a great home, and a mother and a father and a family and everything to me, all my life, all my long life, so I'm very, very grateful.
Well, I can remember being when Darryl and I were little, like Wonderful Grand Bam was family watching. You had to watch it and all that stuff. And
well, actually, I remember I really liked the show, to be honest with you, Up at Hours that you were on way back in the day.
Yeah.
It was just back in those days to see a show about us on TV was pretty rare.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
And I just the thought that we're here talking to you and knowing we've consumed all this beautiful art you've put out into the world is a great thrill. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much, you guys. You're too kind. Thank you.
Well, I got to say how very generous Mary Walsh is to take time, spend time with us. She's a class act all around, and thankful for her spending time with us. Hey, boy.
Very generous indeed, and it was a great bit of fun and really enjoyed it, and just very thankful and grateful to Mary for agreeing to do that with us. Thank you very much, Mary.
Yep, and a shout out to Crooked Arse Creations for our segment, World Famous in Newfoundland. Now, this is the time. This is like our favorite part of the show, isn't it? This is like the frenetic pace, this one.
The lightning round. Here it is.
Lightning round. Okay.
Are you ready? So I got 10 questions for you this time.
10 questions.
10 lightning fast questions.
They're going to come at me quick. I'm ready. I got my seatbelt on.
Quick.
Start the timer.
Here we go. In what year did women obtain the right to vote in Newfoundland and Labrador elections?
1928.
1925. Who was the first female premier of Newfoundland?
Kathy Bennett.
Kathy Dunderdale.
Yes, Dunderdale. That's what I was trying to say.
That's what you meant. What is the name of the first female Newfoundland and Labrador Olympian?
Oh, Caitlin Osmond is wrong, but I'll say that.
It's Maria Maunder. She was a rower. What female Newfoundland and Labrador author wrote Death on the Ice?
Cassie Brown.
Cassie Brown is right. What is the Newfoundland Outport Nursing and Industrial Association, which was formed to support the work of nurses who were providing healthcare services in the outports, better known as?
Nonia?
Nonia.
Yeah.
Right.
Our mother used to knit for that, didn't she?
She did indeed. Yeah. In response to a request from Bishop Michael Fleming of Newfoundland for volunteers to establish a mission, 4 sisters arrived in St. John's in September of 1833 and opened their first school in October of the same year. From what religious order did these sisters belong?
The Sisters of Mercy.
They were the Presentation Sisters. Emmanuel House, once the United Church Hostel for Young Outport Women, was founded in 1946. This woman was instrumental in establishing the hostel and served as its director until 1966.
I'm not going to remember it.
Stella Burry, born in Greenspawn. This Newfoundland and Labrador female athlete has more Olympic medals than any other person in Newfoundland.
Caitlin Osmond.
Caitlin Osmond, indeed. Do you know how many she has?
I feel like it's 2. But
3, in fact. She's actually one of the most decorated singles female skaters in Canadian history. Where was actress Shannon Tweed born?
Born in St. John's, probably.
She was born in Whitburn. Last question, who was the first woman to be Lieutenant Governor of Newfoundland?
Judy Foote.
Judy Foote, our current Lieutenant Governor. Good job.
Well, listen, that's a great bit of fun. And I got to say, a lot of learning. So for those of you listening to this, if you were nearly as stunned as I was coming into this, you should know a little more now. And so I'm grateful to you for all that research. I'm grateful to the Dildo Brewing Company for their continued support and sponsorship. Grateful to Crooked Arse Creations for our world famous Newfoundland. And of course, grateful to Mary Walsh for spending time with us this time. And it's been a great episode. Can't wait to be back with you again. In the meantime, There's not a blasted thing left to say, Darryl, except
Go on by.